I forgot to do. Okay, we're here. You don't get any intros today, guys. Just right into the action because I got too excited to introduce you all to my guest today. And I just hit record before I put in the new fancy music and our little waving hi. So Michael, wave hi will just take the place of technology here. Humans still matter. We're going to prove
we're
it.
human. Yeah.
We're human. Hello, everybody. I am Angie Callan, your host of No More Mondays, the podcast where we do explore being human in the modern work environment so that you can design the career, the business, and most importantly, the life that you love. Today's episode is brought to you by Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries. It is my new book. It is officially out into the world. It is officially available wherever books are sold. And you can also find out more at scarygoodread.com. If you want to reimagine what work and life could and should look like, it ain't a bad read. In fact, it might even be a scary good one. Let's get into it today. I am joined by Michael Newborn, entrepreneur, podcast host, and co-founder of TrySam AI. It is a platform that connects people with their perfect coach. Hey, I can get on board with that, and maybe I did. Michael is also the voice behind the Second Act podcast, where he interviews people who are navigating reinvention or who are on the other side of it and working to write new chapters, something I've done more than once. And I know a lot of you out there are either in the thick of or about to be in the thick of. And so today we're just going to go there. And we're going to talk about what it takes to really step into a second act, more intentional life and work, whatever you want to call it. We're going to dig into why reinvention is really becoming a feature and a possibility, not a bug in the world of modern work. And we also might talk a little bit about how tech can support you along the way. So buckle up. You're in for a fun ride this morning. Let's get into it. Michael, welcome to No More Mondays.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you for that amazing intro and congrats on your book launch. That's awesome.
Thank you. I know we had essentially like an 18-minute podcast conversation before I started recording. And finally I was like, okay, we have to stop and I'm going to record this. And one of them was kind of like, chatting about book publishing and the fact that like the Second Act podcast and Scary Good really are both pieces of media about this idea of, I'm going to say design over default is something I talk a lot about. And you have a whole platform and a podcast around this idea of like a second act or not feeling like you're stuck doing the first thing or the thing that you feel like you're supposed to. And I love that because we have come to a place, in my opinion, in the working world and in society where we have more options. And because of that, I think we are starting to move on from the life and reality of like one career, one identity, and one trajectory for this much longer life that we live. And so I want to start with you and your shift into a second act. What sparked it, and what, more importantly, what made you want to just keep talking about it to other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've had the opportunity to tell the story quite a bit over the last couple of years, but I spent my career in the tech sector. And after 18 years, if we rewind the clock a little bit, I was feeling a little burnt out. I had not taken much of a break between companies. It was really a weekend over all of those 18 years, 4 different companies. And by the end of all of that, it was difficult to find the motivation and just keep going. And so I said, let's take a creative side road, start something new and different. Why not something in the online media space? Why not a podcast? Call it the Second Act. And my co-host and I, started talking about our own journey of reinvention or how we were thinking about the world and things that were interesting to us to explore. And then about a handful of episodes in, we started to bring on guests to the show to talk about their own stories of reinvention and how they were thinking about the world. And it just became this storytelling podcast of ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their second acts in life. And the second act is more of an idea or a concept about just trying to do something new versus a very strict definition. And I think anyone has the freedom to choose to do it. There is some planning and consideration that's involved in that, but I highly encourage people to at least contemplate it and think about it because it opens up ways and doors and things that you never would imagine.
You said a little word I love in there, and it's choose. And, this is a big platform I stand on, is that we have more agency and control in our careers and in our lives than we think we do, and certainly than we exercise. And I think a lot of the reason for that is we're in a little bit of a shift right now of the thinking. I entered the workforce, went to college and entered the workforce under the baby boomer parentage thinking of, you go do one thing. Maybe you change a job once, and then when you're 62 and a half, you get to have fun. And I think that that's what's changed quite a lot, but we're still shifting from like a societal perspective into this thinking that like we do have choices and we do have agency and the ability to design something more intentional, whether it's a 2/3 act, a 1/4 act, a second half. But the big thing is we have to choose to do it and to lean into that a little bit. And so I'm curious, kind of maybe where did you start with that exploration of like, hey, what's possible? And you said you started looking into creative type things. What were the first few things you did outside of the podcast?
Well, I like to take myself out of the comfort zone that many of us live in. And I wasn't comfortable creating a podcast, putting my voice out there in the public through this environment. And so I was like, let's just try it and see what happens. So it was more of some intrinsic motivation to just try something new, suck at it at the beginning, and then try to get better at it over time. The podcasting sphere is very forgiving in terms of the conversation and all of that. And as you get more reps in, just having episodes that are recorded and having chats with guests, you become more comfortable with the medium and the conversation and the people. And then you just start to ask really interesting questions about people's life journeys and learn about the ups and downs of life and the vulnerabilities that people are willing to share. And it's just fascinating. You just get to meet so many incredible people along the way.
I feel like this is a really great medium to be curious, especially if you like to talk to people. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with a few things of like, it's a great place to explore and be curious with kind of like very little fallback, right? You can just not release the suckiest episode you've ever recorded if you really don't want to, or you can put it out there and know that 5 people will listen to it and you're going to be fine.
Exactly.
But I also think it's a really interesting place to find your voice. Especially as you think about moving into either a new act or an intentional act or something purposeful. This idea of having these conversations, I have found my common themes over like 230 episodes and everybody out there is like, yep, heard Angie say that 231 times. Right. And so you start to understand kind of what you're about. And I also think it's great communication skill builder. And so I think it's such an interesting platform for you to lean into as you were getting curious to this next phase.
Yeah. And if you're willing to go back to the starting line and suck at something and try to figure it out internally with our team, we have this word that we've made up, but we embrace fully, and we call ourselves figure outers. And you sort of have to be that in some of the crazy endeavors that we pursue. But I think it's a good mindset to have, because at the end of the day, we're not here on this earth for very long. And so what do you really have to lose in trying to start new things and explore new things and try to reinvent yourself through the process? So that's kind of the mindset we have as we go through all this. And it's just, it turns out to be such a fun experiment in life.
And everybody listening out there went, oh, now I know why Michael and Angie get along, because it's true. We have one life. And sorry to go morbid for a minute. You don't know how long it's going to last. So do you want to put off to tomorrow what could be done or what possibilities you have today? Or do you want to just accept the status quo and stay mediocre? I know what I have chosen. I wrote a book about it. You know what you have chosen. You started a podcast on it. And I'm curious from your experience in just talking and being curious to people of like, what is holding somebody back out there? What should they look for to be like, I really want to lean into this, but they're shooting all over themselves, right? So like what holds most people back from taking this exploration that you and I have?
My best guess is it's just fear of the unknown. I think people are just afraid to take those first steps because, even from your birth, you're sort of programmed in a way to memorize and execute and try to achieve at the highest levels and be perfect in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if you fall short of that, it could be family, friends, other influences that in your mind you think, I haven't lived up to the expectations. I'm not doing to the best of my ability. I'm a failure, but you're really not. It's the people who are pushing forward, trying new things, trying to make change that are really making an impact. So trying to find someone to help you get the courage and identify like really what your purpose is are the most important first steps. And then taking that first step after you've been able to find that really sets you on your way to get where you actually want to be.
Don't do nothing.
Don't do nothing.
Because I think you're spot on with it. I think we were talking about fail being a 4-letter word earlier because, I might write that book next, teaser. And it really has become this taboo. It's a worse 4-letter word than the other 4-letter word, right? Because it's almost like, I don't think social media helped us out here, but we hold ourselves because we assume we're held to this standard of perfection that doesn't allow any play in the margins. Right. But there's a line in my book that I fully believe, and I think it's the one line I've said the most since people have asked me about it. And that is that failure, loosely translated, is a learning experience. Yes. And ultimately, no one will ever get a promotion, change careers, start a business, create a new platform that nobody has created if you don't try something that you won't be perfect at and you don't know how to do. I think the big thing is when we get into these, like this idea of reinvention in second act, it feels big, big, hairy, and audacious and just too meaty. And so we just look at it as like, man, too large versus like the chunking it down where you did with like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast and see where that takes me. Right.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, before we kicked things off, we were talking about my brother-in-law he does writing on the side, and he's actually a very gifted writer. And a couple of years ago, around the same time I launched our podcast, he gave me a book for Christmas called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. And it's totally coincidence that we called ours The Second Act, and Rick Rubin had launched his book called that. But there's a lot of interesting lessons in that. But most importantly is the perspective of how we wound up thinking about the podcast and the conversation as more of an artistic outlet. And are we happy with the conversation and what we're creating, and applying that to either a podcast or something else, but just that mindset of like, create something for you that you think creates value and that you feel like you've done the best with. And if there's 2 people out there that love it, great. If there's 2 million people out there that love it, great. But you've done the thing. And that is helpful context in the thinking around the fear and like, what are people going to think in social media and all that kind of stuff that just, forget that nonsense. Like, just do the thing that you want to do and see what happens.
Yeah. Because if there's one certainty when you go do the thing is that it's going to be messy. You're going to go, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
It's going to be imperfect, and just kind of accept that, but allow yourself to go on the ride. And so I'm curious for you, as you allowed yourself to go on the ride, what's something that you didn't expect as you've moved into this, like, let's say, second phase of professional and life?
How many doors just magically appear and open? It's mind-boggling, really. When you just start trying to do something new, it seems to attract different people. And then those people attract other different people. And all of a sudden you're connected and talking to and working with people that you had never crossed paths with before, or you've never interacted with before. And the level of support and help unsolicited that is offered is just mind-blowing. And it's awesome. From a societal perspective, it's out there. People respect, regardless of the outcome, failure, success. Nobody even cares about that. It's just like, you have actually taken the courage and the initiative to do the thing.
Yeah. Humans are really, this feels like a loaded thing to say on this particular date in history, but humans are really amazing and supportive of each other if you allow it. right? And I think that we have to be more intentional about both giving that and allowing it nowadays, where disconnection is a challenge. But I love what you just said, because I agree. I have, you and I, right? This is like our fourth hour of conversation, the second hour that's been recorded. And it's cool because we would not have crossed paths had we both not ventured into something different. And while it's scary, it's so amazingly rewarding, and you will find out more about yourself than you ever wanted to know, probably, but you will be a more complete human in the process. And so on that note, let's have a real moment. What's been really hard for you as you've made this change?
I would say for me and probably many others that we tend to overestimate what we can do in the short term and underestimate what we can do in the long term. So it really is an endurance game. Like, just, you don't need to make this massive progress every day.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my coaches had shared with me early on that if you just focus on getting 1% a day better, the compound effects of that over months and years is significant. I mean, orders of magnitude greater.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to define what the 1% is. It's just like, is this thing that I do, can I assign that to the 1% for the day and call it a day? And then you'll find yourself over time, okay, this feels like a 2% day, or this is like a 3% day. It's not a 1% day, but the baseline's still the 1% day. And so that has been helpful when I'm feeling like I'm not making as much momentum and progress as I'd like in the short term.
Compound effect, Darren Hardy. There will be my book drop for the day. But it's totally true. I mean, you could, even if you're a numbers person, you are talking to an engineer and a product person, play coach on TV over here. It's like the stock market, right? 1% growth over a year will actually net you more money at the end of the year than one big spike that falls off again. And a lot of this is just like the consistency that you build, and to focus on the things that are going to move the needle for your thing. And I love that you also call it like the thing, because there's this conference I go to every year called The Thing, and it's about doing the thing. And so shout out to Terry and the crew, because I've had a ton of them on this show. Nice. And it's good to have reinforcement of that from somebody kind of outside of it. And speaking of engineers and products, go into a second half. Yeah. I want to talk about identity for a second, because I think one of the challenges that we as professionals have in stepping outside of the thing that we've always done to do the thing we think we want to do is that we over-identify with it. And I know for me, when I left engineering, it was definitely like an identity crisis, because that was the thing that kind of made me interesting. I know now it is the least interesting thing about my weirdness, but you go into, you go to a party and somebody says, what do you do? And you're a female, says, oh, I'm an engineer. You're interesting. Right. And I think in society, we do that a lot. We really identify with what we do for work and not necessarily who we are. And so I'm curious how that kind of re-identification went for you as you stepped out of the tech world to find new footing.
It's an interesting question. And it's like, who are we, right? Like, are we this resume? Are we this title? Are we this whatever? And as we mentioned earlier, we're all about these stories of reinvention and reinventing ourselves all the time. And we try to emphasize, like, worry less about the outcomes. And when we're talking about the thing, doing the thing, that'll help describe you in that moment, in sort of however you want to be around the thing that you're working on. But it's fluid. It's like you're never this thing forever, or this person forever. And that's a good thing. Like, we're all growing and evolving as people. Yeah. And like the stereotypical question at like a mixer or whatever, some kind of happy hour thing. What do you do for work? Or like, hey, I'm so-and-so with this title. I'm like, I think people should ask, like, what's your favorite running shoe? Or what's your favorite vacation spot? Like, just as the opener, because it's much more interesting, I think.
So much more interesting.
I don't know. I think I got off on a tangent.
I'm going to challenge you to try that at your next networking event. But here's in some cultures,
Yeah.
The first, we are the only culture where that is the lead off, right? And I would even say there's some areas of the country where it's more significant. East Coast and major cities for sure. Here in Colorado, we're a little lucky because a lot of times it's what do you do outside for fun?
Yeah.
But then eventually the third question is what do you do for work to support the outdoor adventures? But in some countries, it's what did you eat today? Because they want to know you've been fed and that you're well, right? And so there's just way more human ways to approach that, and also less containerized version of it, right?
Yeah.
I am an engineer is absolute and leaves no room for creative discussion and curiosity about things kind of beyond that, and does not, it implies a steady state. Whereas, I help people reach their full potential and make sure humans still matter makes people go, what? How do you do that? Right? Conversation starters. And speaking of identity, you kind of came full circle and ended up back in the tech sector.
I did. But I just want to touch on one thing you mentioned, Angie. I am fortunate to have traveled to Asia for a couple of trips, and in certain cultures over there, they don't talk business until they've built relationships with each other. Yeah. There's a lot of formality around building relationships. I remember a very specific term called guanxi, and it's building trust over informal discussion and even a meal. And for some reason, in our society at times, it's like, let's get right to business. And I do appreciate that with some of the other cultures, and that there is this more meaningful connection that is established between humans at the beginning before we get to the business. So yes,
Americans are intensely goal-based compared to anyone else in society. If you study communication styles, you will totally know this, like intensely goal-based. And so it's just, let's get to it. Let's get to the point. Let's get to it. And, it's funny because like I consider myself pretty direct to the point communicator, but I think that's different than like this intensity to get to some sort of tangible, what can you do for me and what can I do for you kind of thing. It'd be sweet to be like, hey, who are you? And do we want to have this kind of relationship first before just going all in on it?
Absolutely. But then to come back to your question about how did I get back into tech, then bring this whole thing full circle, because I did. I had a moment. It's like, I don't know, it's tech. I feel like I've accomplished a lot of the things I was hoping to accomplish. 18 years is a long time in the industry. Maybe there's something else. But over the course of the conversations with our guests about stories of reinvention, and learning all these different industries and backgrounds and paths people have taken, 18 months into it, I happened to grab coffee with someone, and we were talking about life and their second act, and the product person in me. I've spent a good deal of time in product management, product leadership. I just couldn't help but ask, like, what business problems are you experiencing in the new thing that you're doing? And it was described to me in some detail, and we were able to prototype something fairly quickly. But in the tech world, that's just one data point. So we're like, okay, let's go talk to dozens of people to see if this is the problem to solve. And it actually wound up not being that particular thing, but it wound up being another thing. And so we're like, we got together, like, can we solve this with data and technology? And we started to all get excited about it. And it was a new type of product that none of us had ever really worked on. So that was exciting. And I found myself back in the throes of technology again, building TrySam.ai. And it's just been an amazing like full circle moment. And it was encouraging that I hadn't lost some of the passion with technology, but also scary, like trying to now build something from the ground up rather than work for tech companies in the past. So that's how I got here.
It's a way different capacity and it's a way different feeling to be founder versus cog in a wheel, for sure. But what I love about this, and even just what we were talking about just before with the relationship building and the human approach to connection that other cultures have, is that essentially you have found a way to use technology to solve a very human problem, which is how to find the right fit when looking for support for personal growth.
Yes. We feel as a team and as part of our core values that preserving human connection, like human beings, is critically important in this age of AI. So we want to connect people as best as possible using our technology. In our case, it's professional coaches with people seeking coaching expertise in that moment for whatever's happening. Sometimes it's really good things, like I've been promoted really fast, or I've taken on all these new responsibilities, or I'm starting something new. I'm in the position to do that. Or it could be something, everything's going off the rails. I need help right now. I need someone who's traveled this road before. And so we try to use technology and AI as the bridge to connecting the expertise with the person seeking that expertise. And that's what we've created. Think of it as like a modern day version of Match.com for professional coaching, if I had to put it in a sentence. But it's really cool to see it come to life from the ground level and solve this problem of like, hey, as a coach, here's all the cool things that I like to work on and that I find interesting in the clients that I work with. And as a coach seeker, here's all the things I'm looking for. And I also find these other attributes or qualities in a coach helpful when I'm engaging with them. And so that's the problem that we're solving.
Well, and that's where I think, when this is some of the stuff we were talking about in the green room, is like almost like the order of applying technology, right? What you just described is an AI enablement tool for humans on purpose, right? And it isn't just replace humans with technology. And I think that that's a really important balance to think about as we move further into modern work. And as you put together a platform that is really meant to have technology be the connector between two people. But that's what's so cool about the possibilities and what technology can do for us.
Absolutely. It when you think about it in a responsible way, I think technology is an amazing thing in society, in the world, and what it's able to do. And for people seeking expertise, they need it, and they don't. There's a timing component in terms of when they need it, but we've sort of empowered those people to explore in private their thoughts and what they need help with. And it's free, and they can, as they sort of figure that out through the technology, and they get matched up with the people that are best suited to help them, they have full control in terms of when they can engage with this expert. Because sometimes it's like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I know who my community within the community is that I can work with. Now it's like, when am I ready? And it could be in that moment, or it could be a week from now, it could be a month from now, but we're giving them a tool to build the confidence that there's people out there that can help them. And then when they're ready, they can hit the express interest button.
Well, and just to kind of go back to the big picture that we've talked about a lot here, is that if you feel like something is you're ready for the change, right? Whether it's a full-on second act, or whether it's just like something's missing, or just there's an inkling, right? This is an example of one small step you could take to say, yes, who's out there to help me? You don't even have to talk to him. You don't have, let alone pay him right now. But this is, and yes, it's a commercial for TriSam AI. However, it's also representative of not only what technology can do for humans, but more importantly, what we as humans owe it to ourselves to do and explore and lean into as we try to tap into much more of our human potential than we ever do. And these are the kind of examples of small things that you can go and do and explore to say, okay, I'm ready to see who can help me. And then when I'm ready to talk to who can help me, I'll take that step. So if somebody wants to check out Sam AI, how do they find it? How do they find you? Where do we follow along with you in the second act and all the things?
So certainly you can find me on LinkedIn, Michael Newborn on LinkedIn. And then we have our podcast. You've already mentioned the second act. And then trysam.ai is the URL. So it's really a call to action to try Sam. Sam is the persona that we've given the technology to start your clarity chat on like exactly what you're looking for. And then as you figure that out with Sam's help, you actually get connected to a human being when you're ready. And that's it. But I want to just come back to, we've talked and used the word a lot, explore. I love explorers. I think of myself as an explorer. It's so much fun to be an explorer and see what's out there in the world. And in fact, we actually use that term quite a bit at a previous company. You needed to have an explorer mindset to really sort of like discover things and figure out where to go next. And I feel like humanity itself is like, it's built into us. Like we've been explorers all our lives.
Yeah.
You know, so I just love that word. So I'm so happy that we're using it.
Well, and it ties back to curiosity. We are by nature curious people. Unfortunately, we've also become way too complacent to just follow into norms and not use the explorer or the figure outer brain inside us that wants to be curious. And that's I think this entire conversation, whether it's specifically about podcasts or the technology or whatever, what I wanted to talk about with you, Michael, we really brought out. And that's this idea that if you give yourself the permission to explore and experiment and be curious, you will land yourself in a world of more satisfaction. That's for sure. And it may not even require some giant change, or maybe it will have a second act, but you owe it to yourself and the power of the human brain to use more of it and go out there and be curious.
Well, for some reason, I don't know if this is recent or not, but humans seem to default to, what if I try this and it goes badly?
Yeah.
Instead of, what if I try this and it goes really well? Like it's hard for me to reconcile that until I just said, I'm just going to default to things might go well. Let's see what happens and be okay with any outcome. You know, we're not running from dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers and like the fight or flight thing anymore. It's like, just see what happens. Try it and see what happens. A lot of it's recoverable, almost all of it. And you'll have a good story to tell at the very least.
You might even have a book in you.
You might even have a soon-to-be best-selling book in you.
And it might be scary good. But
it might be scary.
You took the words out of my mouth, like literally. That's fail as a 4-letter word, right? We've gotten so caught up in this idea that we can't do anything poorly, that we just don't do anything at all, which puts us into this like what if horrible worst case scenario catastrophizing mindset, which by the way, 99% of the time, none of those are even possible. And if they are, they have such a low chance of happening that it's worth the upside and looking at what if instead of what if.
Yeah.
So there's our message for you. What if?
And in this world of AI that's not going away, I think the skills that are going to become much more important are creative thinking, problem solving, and less about memorizing and perfection and all this sort of stuff. So taking these risks, doing new things, using your creative brain that you've been given and just starting to explore and build, I believe you'll be rewarded in the future with that sort of approach.
Human skills are where they're at. I'm actually going to extend what you just said, because one of the last question we always ask around here, you just kind of queued yourself up for perfectly. And that is, in thinking about the future of work, what's it look like to you? And more importantly, how can we humans stay grounded while we navigate it?
Yeah, earlier in the conversation, we started with the historical or legacy approach to work, where you work at a company for a long time and climb the ladder and do all those things. And we've certainly evolved, at least with some of the more recent generations. Like I think about work differently. There's been all these macro events that have affected my life, and the loyalty to employers and and vice versa has sort of been diminished. And so I need to think about, how I contribute to the company and to the world, but also do things that are important to me. And what that looks like is probably a lot different going forward in terms of building different areas of expertise, building some domain knowledge and expertise in certain areas, and maybe having side hustles, different jobs. I don't even know what a full-time job will look like in 5 or 10 years. So just be open to that world shifting and start to build skill sets with the tools and in the areas that are interesting to you.
Diversify sounds like a good summary of that statement. And I think it's totally true. Yeah, we're beyond finding all of our meaning inside our vocation.
Yep.
We are also beyond the loyalty and trust of employers, and to some extent need to take the agency that we have in order to give ourselves options. And so I think that's a really great way to think about how we make sure we stay relevant and are able to navigate the future of modern work.
Yeah, and it gives you permission to like explore, and then if you're having a conversation with someone in the future that is work related, and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about pursuing work in this area, or maybe with this company, I imagine a lot of people are going to be like, okay, show me why this is a passion area for you, or why you think you'd be good at it. And it's going to go beyond a traditional resume, whether digital or printed version of that. But it's like, show me something you built and why you built it, and sort of like the meaning and passion behind this thing, so that people understand, again, how you've broken down the problem, solved the problem, used a creative lens to approach that with all the tools at your disposal today.
And it all started with giving yourself permission to explore. That sounds like a pretty great way to wrap what has been an excellent conversation. Michael Newborn, thank you for being part of No More Mondays.
Thank you, Angie. This was a scary good conversation.
I didn't pay him to say that, but I do want to remind all of you out there that second acts aren't just possible. It's very possible. This is the reality and the real story of where we're going in the modern work. And I want you to really remember it's never too late to put on that curiosity hat and explore or even start something new. Reinvention is human, it is possible, and it's yours if you choose to take it. And if you want some more proof, I do have a scary good read all about it. So head over to scarygoodread.com if you want some inspiration to explore that new chapter. And in the meantime, I will see you next week for another edition of No More Mondays podcast. Michael Newborn, thank you one more time.
Thank you, Angie. This was a lot of fun.